Hey guys, Andrew Henderson from Nomad Capitalist in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. Wanted to talk a little bit about where you can go as a perpetual traveler, as a nomad, as someone traveling around the world and easily get in without a lot of visa problems. And while we specifically talk to folks from Western countries at Nomad Capitalist, this video will talk about countries that allow more than just US, Canadian, Australian, European citizens in. And this is important, I believe, because when you look at a country and who they let in and what their visa-free travel policy looks like, the countries that are more open, it tends to, not always, but it tends to indicate that those countries are more open in other ways. Now, I wrote an article not that long ago on nomadcapitalist.com where I talked about 4 ways to live like a nomad. On one end of the spectrum is the traditional expat, where you live in one place, you vacation from there, pretty straightforward. On the other end of the spectrum is the perpetual traveler, which is what I did for quite a while. And in between is maybe you have a base, or as I do, have a couple bases, you travel a lot from there. So if you're going to a lot of countries, obviously you'll want to know where can you get in easily. And there are a number of countries that come to mind, again, not just for Westerners, but for everybody. One of them that comes to mind is Georgia. I talk a lot about Georgia, I'm bullish on Georgia, and they have one of the most aggressive visa-free policies in the world. I think 150 some countries can visit for a full year, 360 days to be specific, with just a tourist visa. No e-visa, no need to do anything, just show up in Batumi or Tbilisi or wherever, and you get a year. There are a few countries such as India that you need an e-visa, you get 90 days, still pretty generous considering it's not that difficult to get, so Georgia very friendly. Also, the Seychelles, as far as I know, little island chain off the coast of Africa, beautiful place, 90 days for every single country. Again, as far as I know, I don't think there are any exceptions. Seychelles, of course, is an offshore haven, not a big one that I recommend anymore, but a great place to go if you want to be a little bit more far-flung. And again, it shows that, like Georgia, which is very open to foreign investment, Seychelles is open to foreign investment, they let everyone come in. Other countries, Ecuador lets pretty much everyone in. In fact, whenever I'm doing research on a passport, I think I was looking at Burundi's passport the other day, and I saw that they couldn't get into Ecuador. I said, wow, this is a really terrible passport, because everyone can get into Ecuador for about 90 days. Ecuador, a very nice place, very welcoming place, very open to foreigners. They let pretty much everybody in. Other examples, many of which are in Southeast Asia. Malaysia, I had a base there for a while, love the country. It's a great place to go. They don't let quite as many people in, but they're very friendly, very welcoming, not nearly as difficult to deal with as their neighbors to the north in Thailand when it comes to people who want to visit frequently. So Malaysia is a great place, and they allow, because they're a Muslim country, they allow a lot of the Middle Eastern countries, they allow some African countries in, a lot of countries that have trouble getting into other places, as well as Iran, places like that. A lot of those countries can go to Malaysia very easily. So Malaysia is a very welcoming place, especially for folks who don't have as many options. Other countries in Southeast Asia, Cambodia, where I'm at right now, pretty much everyone can get in on a 30-day e-visa, which can be extended for another month. Many nationalities qualify for visa on arrival, which you can extend for up to a year. And I got an e-visa on my worst passport, worked very nicely, arrived, 0 problems, very friendly place. As long as you pay their minor fee, they'll let you in. Vietnam has become easier. They let pretty much everybody in. Indonesia now advertises 169 countries visa-free. I tried to use a passport to get into Indonesia, and they said, we think you're from the US. Can you just use that one instead and make our life easier? Because they didn't know which countries were visa-free and visa on arrival and that yet. So there are times when countries are becoming more accessible, where there's a period where they don't exactly know. If you're not from a country that they recognize, they may not know the policy. So that's important to keep in mind. But Indonesia, among other countries, is moving towards what I see as a trend of being much, much more open. There are more and more countries that are becoming open all the time. Panama is another one. They let a lot of people in. Not everyone, not African nationalities, but if you're from pretty much anywhere in the Western world or the emerging world, they'll let you in. Colombia is pretty generous, even to what I would call a Tier B passport holder. So, where I spend time in Georgia, Georgian citizens get 180 days in Colombia, whereas U.S. citizens get 90. So, Latin America in particular, Nicaragua is another one, by the way, that has pretty generous visa on arrival policy. A lot of the other Central American countries are actually not that easy to get into. So Panama, Nicaragua, Ecuador in the Americas, Georgia, much of Southeast Asia these days, even Myanmar is trying to get better. Those are some great places that you can go. Obviously the EU, the US, Canada, Australia, all these countries are a pain. Even if you're supposed to be able to go, they ask you questions. I mean, the countries that are easiest to go are obviously not the ones that everyone wants to go to. They're the ones that need tourism, and they realize that, and they're trying to be very friendly. So if you're a perpetual traveler and you're looking for places to go where you're going to be treated best, as we say, go where you're treated best. You'll want to go to places that let you in. Maybe you want to visit a few times a year. Maybe you want to stay a while and not be harassed. Those are definitely some countries to consider. Go to nomadcapitalist.com, read my article on 4 ways to be an expat. We also have an article on this topic, easiest countries for visa-free travel. Check that out, and I would love to hear your feedback on your travel experiences. Just leave a comment in the comments section below.